Well, it's that time to be with Jan McNeilin out in the garden because there's still chores to do.
Sure.
So what you got for us this month?
Well, I have a brugmansia here that one of them I planted and the other one came up from last year. And last year I put some of the smaller ones in the greenhouse, and this year they're too big. So I'm going to cut it back.
Okay.
And then put a big old tomato cage over the top and fill it with leaves. So I'm going to cut it way down.
So do you think that that insulation will just help save the roots?
Yes, because they're going to die off anyway, and then it'll come back from the base. So there's those.
But that's a good idea because it'll be fun to see if it does. Maybe it'll be a mild winter, maybe it won't. So it's kind of a good experiment.
It is, and I'm going to have to get something out of the way here. There we go. All right, so over the top of the root zone, can you see where last year's was?
Yeah.
And then it came up from the base. So I'm going to put a few shovels of mulch around this first, put the tomato cage on, and fill it with leaves.
That's a great idea, and you could do that for other things too in your garden that you want to try to save over and see if they do winter over.
Sure. I have another plant that I looked at the other day to see what the zone was, and it's zone 8 to 10, which is kind of marginal for here. So I'm going to just keep bringing this up here, and then we'll put the cage over the top and fill it with leaves.
Excellent. And that's a good thing to do with your leaves, is to kind of insulate your beds or insulate plants that you want to save over.
Yeah, I blow the leaves clear. I put all the pots on the south side of the house, blow the leaves over, leave them till spring. Same thing in the front yard. I blow them all into the beds and rake them off in the spring.
So really, you don't have to just bring them to the compost people or put them in your compost in a certain area. You can put them in your beds, and that leaf mold is amazing.
Yes, it is.
Amazing mulch.
Well, in the process, you can look online for USDA plant zones, which will give you information on where you live, what zone you're in.
Right.
We're in 8 here. But last winter, I bet you we were almost 9 because we didn't really get that cold a temperature. And so the zones are here, and what the USDA plant zones are is that it's the temperature, the lowest temperature that plant can take and survive.
Right.
Doesn't mean that it's going to do great, but the root zone likely is going to still live.
Right, and it's an average temperature.
Right. So keep that in mind when you're purchasing plants. Look for the USDA zone and know where you are.
Right. And the plant you were talking about is the Tupistra, correct?
Yes.
And that
it's
have
a Chinese
gorgeous
ruffle plant.
Yeah, and there's a beautiful one at Lansu, and you have a beautiful specimen here.
I guess I do. I didn't really know what it was in the beginning, so I figured it out and figured out the zone.
Right.
The next thing I want to remind folks of, I've planted a lot of bulbs already, but here are some more, and I had them ready to plant and in the greenhouse. But there wasn't enough air circulation in there, and they started to mold.
Oh.
So before I got them in the ground. So I brought them in the house, let them dry out, and now I'm going to plant them.
And Jan, to kind of prevent this mold, people are bringing in houseplants in their small greenhouses and other plants. And so what do you recommend that can cut down on this mold?
Well, the thing that will is, because it's like in my greenhouse, and that's what happened to these bulbs, I have a little fan in there that I hadn't turned on yet. So if you got a good air circulation, same thing in the house, you're not going to turn a fan on in the house, but it's going to be drier in the house than it would be in a greenhouse as far as air circulation.
And what about like slugs? We have to talk about slugs this time of year. We should be baiting, and then you had noticed something.
Well, I've had questions in the extension office years ago that are these slug eggs, and it's osmocote. It's a coated fertilizer that are put in the pots. In many nurseries, you'll come home with it there.
Right.
So just know the difference between a nice milky white slug egg versus osmocote. If you're using osmocote, scratch it into the soil and keep it damp so it continues to work for you.
Well, you know, Jan, we've had a great year. It's been a crazy year, but thank you so much for all the tips. We so appreciate it.
No problem. We'll see you next year.
Yep, definitely.